The massive ships moved through space like dark mountains floating in an endless sea. 2,000 vessels, each one bigger than the tallest buildings on any planet, drifted toward a small blue world that spun quietly around its yellow star. Inside the largest ship, Admiral Vextar stood before a wall of glowing screens. His forearms crossed behind his back as he watched his target grow larger. The Caltherian stellar empire had conquered 847 worlds. Every single planet had fallen within hours of their arrival. Some had tried to fight back with their primitive weapons. Others had begged for mercy. A few had simply given up the moment they saw the fleet approaching. It never mattered. The result was always the same. Vextar's tactical officer, a younger Caltherian with bright purple skin, approached with a data pad in his clawed hands. "Admiral, we have completed our scan of the target world. The inhabitants call it Earth." "Tell me about them," Vextar said, his voice deep and rumbling. "They are a young species, Admiral. Single-planet civilization. No colonies beyond their own solar system. Their technology is very basic. They still use chemical rockets to reach their own moon. Their strongest weapons are simple atomic bombs. Nothing that could threaten even our smallest ships." Vextar nodded. This was exactly what he had expected. The intelligence reports from their advanced scouts had described Earth as nothing special. Just another backwater planet full of primitive creatures who thought they were important because they had learned to split atoms and send radio signals into space. "Population?" he asked. "Approximately 7 billion individuals. They appear to be divided into many small nations that often fight among themselves. We have identified several major military installations, but their defenses are laughably weak." The Admiral smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Perfect. We will make an example of this world. The galaxy needs to be reminded of what happens when lesser species exist in territory that belongs to the Empire." He walked to the communication station, where another officer waited for orders. The bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Edge, was larger than most city blocks. Hundreds of crew members worked at their stations, monitoring weapons, engines, and the thousands of other systems that kept their massive ship functioning. "Open a channel to all ships in the fleet," Vextar commanded. "It is time to announce our arrival." The communications officer's fingers danced over his controls. Across the fleet, every ship received the same message. They were to assume attack formation and prepare for a standard conquest operation. First, they would demand surrender. When the humans refused, they would demonstrate their power with a limited bombardment of military targets. Then would come the real attack. "Channel open, Admiral." Vextar stepped forward, knowing that his words were being broadcast not only to his own fleet, but to every radio telescope and communication satellite around Earth. He had given this same speech 847 times before, though he usually adjusted it slightly for each new world. "Inhabitants of the third planet of this system," his voice boomed across the void, "you are now within territory claimed by the Caltherian stellar empire. Your civilization is terminated. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be swift. Resistance will only bring greater suffering." The message was transmitted in 47 different galactic languages, though Vextar doubted these primitives understood any of them. It didn't matter. The meaning would be clear enough when his ships began firing. He waited for the usual response. Sometimes they tried to negotiate. Often they sent panicked messages begging for mercy or asking what they had done wrong. A few times the bravest species had actually threatened him, promising to defend their world to the last breath. This time, there was only silence. Vextar frowned. He checked the communication systems, but everything was working perfectly. The message had definitely been transmitted. Earth satellites were receiving it clearly, but no response came back. "Perhaps they are too frightened to answer," suggested his tactical officer. "Or too stupid," growled the weapons officer from his station. "I have seen the recordings of their entertainment broadcasts. They spend most of their time watching other members of their species pretend to be different people. They are clearly not very intelligent." Vextar waited another few minutes, but the silence continued. This had never happened before. Every species they had encountered had at least tried to communicate, once they realized what was happening. Even the proudest warrior races had sent some kind of message, if only to boast about how they would never surrender. But Earth said nothing. "Admiral," the sensor officer called out, "I am detecting some unusual activity on the planet's surface." "Explain." "Their military installations are not showing increased activity. No ships launching, no weapons powering up. But I am reading strange energy signatures from several locations. Very faint, but definitely artificial. Vextar studied the sensor data. The energy readings were indeed odd. They seemed to be coming from deep underground facilities that their initial scans had not detected. The signatures were unlike anything in the Caltherian database of known technologies. Could it be some kind of planetary defense system? Asked the tactical officer. Impossible, Vextar replied. Our scouts observed this system for months. These creatures barely have the technology to leave their own atmosphere. Whatever those readings represent, they cannot pose a threat to us. He made his decision. All ships assume attack formation. We will proceed with standard conquest protocol. Target their major population centers and military installations. Prepare to fire on my command. Across the vast fleet, 2,000 ships moved into their assigned positions. Weapons systems that could crack continents powered up. Shields that had never been breached by enemy fire hummed to life. The Caltherian war machine prepared to add another world to their empire. Vextar looked at the blue planet one more time. It looked so peaceful, so innocent. In a few minutes, that would all change. The humans would learn what it meant to stand in the path of the Caltherian Empire. All ships report ready, Admiral, announced the tactical officer. Excellent. Begin countdown to bombardment. 60 seconds, the countdown began, around the bridge. Crew members prepared for what they expected to be a very short battle. Some had already begun calculating how long it would take to establish occupation forces on the planet's surface. 30 seconds, Admiral. Vextar allowed himself one final moment of satisfaction. Another world was about to fall to Caltherian might. Another species would learn that resistance to the Empire was pointless. 10 seconds, Admiral. He raised his hand, ready to give the order that would begin Earth's destruction. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire. Admiral Vextar commanded. But the word had barely left his mouth when everything went wrong. 3 months earlier, deep beneath the city of Seoul, Admiral Park Dae-ho stared at the holographic display floating above the conference table. The image showed a massive fleet of alien ships moving slowly through space, still far from Earth but clearly heading in their direction. The United Earth Defense Coordination Center had been built for exactly this moment, though everyone had hoped it would never be needed. The room was filled with the best military minds from every nation on Earth, all trying to figure out how to save their planet from complete destruction. How many ships? Park asked, though he had already heard the number several times. Commander Lee So-min, Earth's chief expert on alien technology, cleared her throat. 2,000 vessels, sir. Each one is approximately 8 kilometers long. Our computers estimate they could carry anywhere from 50,000 to 200,000 crew members each. Captain Kim Tae-woo from Earth's small space fleet shook his head in disbelief. Our entire space force has 47 ships. The biggest one is barely a kilometer long. If we tried to fight them directly, we would be destroyed in minutes. What about nuclear weapons? Asked General Martinez from the American forces. We ran the calculations, replied Dr. Choi Min-ah, Earth's leading physicist. Even if we could get nuclear missiles close enough to their ships, which we probably can't, the explosions would barely scratch their hulls. These vessels are built to survive in space. They can handle radiation and heat far beyond anything our weapons can produce. The room fell silent. Everyone knew the situation was hopeless, but nobody wanted to say it out loud. Earth had achieved amazing things in the past century. They had split the atom, reached the moon, and built computers that could think faster than human brains. But they were still just one small planet, and the enemy was an entire galactic empire. Admiral Park looked around the table at the worried faces of his colleagues. These were good people, smart people, but they were thinking like traditional military commanders. They were trying to figure out how to fight a war against an enemy that was simply too powerful to defeat. What if we don't try to fight them? He said quietly. Captain Kim looked confused. Sir? What if we don't try to fight their ships with our ships? What if we don't try to match their weapons with our weapons? What if we do something completely different? Dr. Choi leaned forward. What did you have in mind, Admiral? Park stood up and walked to the holographic display. He reached out and touched one of the alien ships, making it rotate slowly in the air. These ships are huge. They're powerful. But they're also predictable. They follow the same pattern everywhere they go. Show up, demand surrender, start bombing when they don't get it. That's true, agreed Commander Lee. Our analysis of their previous conquest shows they always use the same strategy. They rely on overwhelming force to frighten their enemies into giving up. But what if their enemy isn't afraid? Park continued. What if their enemy is too crazy to realize they should be afraid? Dr. Choi began to understand what he was thinking. Admiral, are you talking about Project Deep Strike? Everyone in the room knew about Project Deep Strike. It was an experimental weapons program that had been developed for mining operations in the asteroid belt. The idea was to create torpedoes that could phase through solid matter using quantum tunneling technology, then rematerialize inside asteroids and explode, breaking them apart from the inside. How many quantum torpedoes can we build in 3 months? Park asked. Well, Dr. Choi said slowly, if we converted all our manufacturing facilities and used every resource available, maybe 2,000? 2,000, Park repeated. One for each enemy ship. Captain Kim looked skeptical. Admiral, even if we could build that many torpedoes, how would we deliver them? Our ships can't get close enough to their fleet without being destroyed. We don't need to get close, Dr. Choi said, excitement growing in her voice. Quantum tunneling torpedoes don't travel through normal space. They exist in a different dimension until they reach their target. We could fire them from Earth and they would materialize directly inside the enemy's ships. Inside their ships? General Martinez asked. Inside their fusion reactors, Dr. Choi explained. Every ship needs power. If we can identify the energy signature of each vessel's power source, we can program the torpedoes to materialize at exactly the right location. The explosions would destroy the reactors and the reactors would destroy the ships. The room was quiet as everyone considered this plan. It was completely insane. It would require building weapons that had never been tested in combat, using technology that was still experimental, and hitting 2,000 targets simultaneously with perfect accuracy. Commander Lee spoke first. The timing would have to be exact. If even one ship survived the attack, it could warn the rest of their empire about our capabilities. How exact? Park asked. Every single torpedo would need to detonate within the same second, Dr. Choi replied, maybe even the same tenth of a second. And we would need to map the internal structure of every enemy ship to make sure we hit their reactors instead of empty corridors. Captain Kim shook his head. It's impossible. We've never attempted anything like this. The coordination required would be beyond anything humans have ever achieved. Admiral Park smiled for the first time since the meeting began. Captain, has anything humans have ever achieved been possible by reasonable standards? He looked around the table again. We went from riding horses to flying airplanes in 50 years. We went from the first airplane to landing on the moon in 66 years. We built weapons that could destroy entire cities. Then we built computers that could fit in our pockets and connect to every other human on the planet. But Admiral, Commander Lee said, this is different. This is exactly the kind of impossible thing humans are good at, Park interrupted. We don't win by being stronger or smarter than our enemies. We win by being too stubborn to accept that we can't win. Dr. Choi was already running calculations in her head. We would need to modify every torpedo manufacturing facility on Earth. We would need to build new quantum computers to coordinate the targeting. We would need to track each enemy ship and map their internal structure using sensors that don't exist yet. Can it be done? Park asked. Not by any reasonable standard, she replied, but maybe by human standards. General Martinez leaned back in his chair. If this fails, we all die anyway. If it succeeds, Admiral Park said, we send a message to every aggressive species in the galaxy. We tell them that Earth is not an easy target. We tell them that humans fight back. The vote was unanimous. Project Deep Strike would begin immediately. Every resource on Earth would be dedicated to building the weapons and systems needed to destroy an entire invasion fleet in a single coordinated attack. As the meeting broke up and the various commanders hurried off to begin their impossible tasks, Dr. Choi approached Admiral Park. Admiral, there is one thing I should mention. Even if everything goes perfectly, we'll only get one chance at this. If we miss even a single ship, they'll adapt their defenses and we'll never be able to use this strategy again. Park nodded. Then we better not miss. Over the next 3 months, every factory, laboratory, and research facility on Earth worked around the clock. Scientists who had never spoken to each other collaborated on projects that pushed the boundaries of known physics. Engineers built machines that existed only in theoretical papers. Military commanders planned the most complex coordinated attack in human history. And somehow, impossibly, it all came together. With 1 day left before the enemy fleet arrived, Admiral Park stood in the same conference room where the plan had been born. The holographic display now showed 2,000 red dots representing enemy ships, and 2,000 green dots representing quantum torpedoes ready to fire. "Status report," he said. "All weapons ready, Admiral," replied Dr. Choi. "Targeting computers are locked onto every enemy vessel. Detonation will occur simultaneously across the entire fleet." "And if it doesn't work?" Dr. Choi smiled. "Then at least we'll go down fighting." Admiral Park took a deep breath. In a few hours, they would learn whether human ingenuity was enough to overcome overwhelming odds. Either way, the galaxy was about to learn something new about the species that lived on the third planet of an ordinary yellow star. Captain Han So-young floated in the command chair of the stealth ship Silent Watcher, her eyes fixed on the tactical display that showed the Caltherian fleet spreading across space like a dark cloud. Her ship was completely invisible to enemy sensors, hidden behind advanced cloaking technology that bent light and energy around the hull. She was close enough to see the massive alien vessels with her naked eyes, yet they had no idea she was there. "Distance to enemy flagship?" she asked quietly. 12,000 kilometers, Captain," replied Lieutenant Yoon Min-soo from the sensor station. "We're well within their weapons range, but they still can't detect us." Han So-young had volunteered for this mission, though everyone had told her it was probably suicide. Her job was to observe the attack from close range and report the results back to Earth. If the quantum torpedo strike failed, she would be the first human to die in humanity's first interstellar war. If it succeeded, she would be the first human to witness the destruction of an entire invasion fleet. "Captain," Communications Officer Jang Hye-jin called from her station. "I'm receiving the final countdown signal from Seoul. 60 seconds to weapons launch." On her display, Han So-young could see the enemy ships moving into attack formation. The massive vessels looked like floating cities, their hulls covered in weapon ports and sensor arrays. Each ship could have carried the entire population of a small country. The largest ones were bigger than anything humans had ever built. 30 seconds. "Captain." She thought about her family back in Busan. Her parents ran a small restaurant near the harbor where she had grown up watching fishing boats come and go. Her younger brother was studying engineering at university. Her daughter was only 8 years old, probably asleep in her bed right now, completely unaware that alien warships were preparing to destroy her world. 15 seconds, Captain. Han So-young activated the ship's recording systems. Whatever happened in the next few minutes would be studied by historians for generations, assuming there were any generations left to study it. 2,000 quantum torpedoes were about to materialize inside 2,000 enemy ships. The timing had to be perfect down to fractions of a second. 10 seconds, Captain. She could see the enemy flagship clearly now. The bridge was a massive structure on top of the ship covered in glowing windows. Somewhere inside that bridge, an alien commander was probably giving orders to begin Earth's destruction. He had no idea that death was already traveling toward him through dimensions he couldn't even detect. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mark! For a moment, nothing happened. The enemy ships continued their slow advance toward Earth, their weapons charging for the bombardment that would end human civilization. Han So-young held her breath, wondering if the attack had somehow failed. Then space erupted in light. 2,000 balls of fire bloomed simultaneously across the Caltherian fleet. The quantum torpedoes had materialized inside the fusion reactors of every enemy ship at exactly the same instant, and the reactors were exploding like miniature suns. The enemy flagship, which had seemed so massive and powerful just seconds before, was now an expanding sphere of superheated plasma. "God," whispered Lieutenant Yoon. It actually worked. Han So-young watched in amazement as the most powerful military force in galactic history simply ceased to exist. Ships that had conquered hundreds of worlds were torn apart from the inside by explosions that made nuclear weapons look like firecrackers. The light was so bright that her ship's sensors had to adjust their sensitivity to avoid being overloaded. "Are you recording this?" she asked. "Every second, Captain," replied the communications officer. "This is going to be the most important video in human history." The explosions continued for almost a full minute as fusion reactors went critical and tore their ships apart. When the light finally began to fade, Han So-young ran a full sensor sweep of the area where the enemy fleet had been. The results were exactly what she had hoped for and feared at the same time. Complete destruction confirmed, she announced. No survivors detected. No escape pods. No intact vessels. The entire Caltherian invasion fleet has been eliminated. Back on Earth, in the command center beneath Sol, Admiral Park Deho stood before the main tactical display as reports came in from observation posts around the solar system. Every single red dot representing an enemy ship had disappeared from the screen. In 60 seconds, humans had achieved something that no other species in the galaxy had managed to do in centuries of warfare. Confirm the kill count, he ordered. 2,000 targets eliminated. Admiral, reported the tactical officer. 0 enemy survivors. Mission success across all parameters. The command center was completely silent. Everyone was staring at the display, trying to process what they had just witnessed. 3 months of impossible preparation had led to 1 minute of absolute victory. Earth had faced complete annihilation and had somehow turned it into complete triumph. Dr. Choi Minna approached the Admiral with a data pad in her hands. Sir, we're receiving quantum communications from allied civilizations across the galaxy. They're all asking the same question, which is, how did we destroy the Caltherian fleet so quickly? The Centaurians want to know if we used some kind of superweapon. The Andromedans are asking if we had help from another galactic power. The Vegan Republic is wondering if the Caltherians suffered some kind of technical malfunction. Admiral Park considered his response carefully. Earth had just demonstrated military capabilities that exceeded anything known to galactic civilization. Every species in the galaxy would be watching Earth now, trying to understand how a single planet had defeated an empire that had conquered nearly 1,000 worlds. What should we tell them, Admiral? Dr. Choi asked. Tell them the truth, Park replied. Tell them that humans don't like being invaded. Captain Han So-young's stealth ship was still floating among the debris of the Caltherian fleet when she received new orders from Earth. Her mission was expanding beyond simple observation. Earth Command wanted detailed scans of the destroyed ships to understand Caltherian technology and tactics. Lieutenant Yoon, begin debris analysis, she ordered. I want to know everything about these ships, how they were built, what weapons they carried, how many crew members they had. As her sensors swept through the wreckage, Han So-young began to understand the full scope of what had happened. Each Caltherian ship had carried between 80 and 100,000 crew members. The total death count from the attack was approaching 200 million alien soldiers. Captain, the sensor officer called out, I'm detecting something unusual in the debris field. Explain. The fragments I'm analyzing show evidence of extremely advanced technology. Energy systems beyond anything in our databases. Weapons that could have destroyed entire continents. Defensive shields that should have been able to stop any known attack. Han So-young studied the readings. And yet our quantum torpedoes penetrated all their defenses. Yes, Captain. It appears that their technology was designed to defend against conventional attacks. Energy weapons, projectile weapons, even advanced particle beams. But they had no defense against weapons that materialize inside their ships from another dimension. This was both encouraging and terrifying news. Encouraging because it meant Earth's victory had been based on superior strategy rather than superior technology. Terrifying because it meant the Caltherians would now know about quantum tunneling weapons and would develop countermeasures. Send all this data back to Earth immediately, Han So-young ordered. Command needs to know that our advantage is probably temporary. The next time we face the Caltherians, they'll be ready for quantum attacks. As her ship transmitted the intelligence data back to Earth, Han So-young took one last look at the debris field that had once been the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Somewhere in that wreckage were the remains of Admiral Vextar and his crew. Beings who had expected an easy victory over a primitive world. Instead, they had encountered something far more dangerous than advanced technology or superior weapons. They had encountered human creativity, human determination, and the human refusal to accept that some problems can't be solved. The galaxy was about to learn that Earth was not just another conquest. Earth was the place where impossible things became possible, where desperate situations became opportunities, and where a single minute could change the course of galactic history. The war was far from over, but for the first time in months, Han So-young allowed herself to believe that humanity might actually win. The news traveled across the galaxy faster than light itself, carried by quantum communication networks that connected every major civilization. On 1,000 different worlds, Military commanders stared at their displays in disbelief. The Caltherian invasion fleet was gone. All 2,000 ships had been destroyed in less than a minute by a species that most galactic databases listed as primitive and not yet spacefaring. On the Caltherian homeworld of Zeth Prime, Emperor Zalthmor stood in his war room surrounded by holographic displays, showing empty space where his most powerful fleet should have been. His forearms trembled with rage as he processed the impossible reports coming from the outer territories. How? He roared at his assembled generals. How does a backwater planet destroy 2,000 ships? General Krathavel, his most experienced military commander, stepped forward nervously. Your Majesty, our analysis suggests they used some form of internal explosive device. The ships were destroyed from within, not by external attack. Internal explosives? Are you suggesting they had spies aboard our vessels? No, Your Majesty. The explosions occurred simultaneously across the entire fleet. No boarding parties, no infiltrators. The weapons appeared inside our ships as if they had materialized from thin air. Emperor Zalthmor's eyes blazed with fury. In 800 years of conquest, the Caltherian Empire had never lost more than a dozen ships in any single battle. Now they had lost an entire invasion force without inflicting a single casualty on the enemy. Mobilize every reserve fleet, he commanded. Call back ships from all occupied territories. This planet Earth will be reduced to atomic dust, and every member of their species will be eliminated as an example to the galaxy. Meanwhile, on the neutral space station Nexus Prime, representatives from hundreds of civilizations gathered for an emergency session of the Galactic Council. The massive station orbited a binary star system at the edge of known space, serving as neutral ground where different species could meet and negotiate without fear of attack. Ambassador Song Ji-hoon represented Earth at the council meeting. Though he had only arrived at the station a few days earlier, Earth had never been invited to join the Galactic Council before, mostly because nobody had considered them advanced enough to matter. Now everyone wanted to know how they had achieved the impossible. Ambassador Song called out Delegate Thelnara of the Crystalline Consortium. Your species has accomplished something that no civilization has managed in recorded galactic history. You destroyed a Caltherian fleet without losing a single ship. How? Song Ji-hoon was a career diplomat who had spent years preparing for first contact with alien civilizations. He had studied their languages, their cultures, and their political systems. But nothing had prepared him for this situation. He was supposed to be introducing humanity to the galaxy as a peaceful, cooperative species. Instead, he was explaining how they had just committed the largest military action in galactic history. We defended ourselves, he replied carefully. The Caltherians came to our system with the stated intention of destroying our civilization. We took appropriate defensive measures. Defensive measures? The Zephyrian delegate's translator crackled with disbelief. You eliminated 2,000 ships in under a minute. That's not defense, that's a military capability beyond anything we've ever seen. Song Ji-hoon chose his words carefully. My species has a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When faced with extinction, we became very creative very quickly. In the back of the chamber, other delegates whispered among themselves. The Andromedans, who had fought the Caltherians for centuries and never won a major victory, wanted to know if Earth would share their weapons technology. The Vegan Republic was asking if Earth planned to launch attacks against other Caltherian territories. The smaller civilizations were wondering if they should align themselves with this new power or hide before they became Earth's next target. Ambassador, pressed Delegate Thelnara, what assurances can you give us that Earth will not use these weapons against peaceful civilizations? You have our word, Song replied. Earth has no interest in conquering other worlds. We simply want to be left alone to develop in peace. But even as he spoke, Song knew that the situation was spiraling beyond anyone's control. Earth had demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything in galactic civilization, and the galaxy was responding with a mixture of awe and terror. While the politicians debated on Nexus Prime, the Caltherian Empire was already mobilizing for revenge. Emperor Zalthmor had issued the Blood Decree, the highest form of military mobilization in Caltherian law. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon in the Empire was being redirected toward one goal, the complete annihilation of Earth and every human living on it. In the Outer Rim territories, Commander Baek Do-hyun received urgent orders from Earth Command. Her Deep Strike Task Force, consisting of 12 of Earth's most advanced ships, was being deployed to locate and neutralize Caltharian reserve fleets before they could reach the solar system. "Status report," she ordered as she boarded her flagship. "The Quantum Storm. 3 major fleet concentrations detected," reported Tactical Officer Shin Yu-jin. "The first group has 3,500 ships and is moving toward Earth from the Vega sector. The second group has 4,200 ships approaching from Centauri. The third group is smaller, only 2,800 ships, but they're coming from the direction of the Caltharian home system." Commander Beck studied the tactical displays. Over 10,000 enemy ships were converging on Earth from 3 different directions. Even with their quantum torpedo advantage, Earth couldn't possibly build enough weapons to destroy that many targets simultaneously. "Analysis of the new enemy ships?" she asked. "They're different from the first invasion force," Shin Yu-jin replied. "Larger, with distributed power systems instead of single central reactors. They've also deployed some kind of quantum interference field around each ship. They're adapting to our tactics," Beck realized. "They know how we destroyed their first fleet, and they're trying to make themselves immune to quantum torpedo attacks." This was exactly what Earth's strategists had feared. The first victory had been possible because the Caltharians didn't know what was coming. Now they were prepared, and Earth would have to find a new way to win against impossible odds. "Ma'am," the communications officer interrupted. "We're receiving a priority message from Dr. Choi on Earth. She says she has a solution to the quantum interference problem." The message from Dr. Choi was both encouraging and terrifying. She had developed a new type of quantum torpedo that could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making it impossible for the Caltharian interference fields to block them. But the new weapons required so much energy that each one would drain the power from an entire city for several hours. "How many of the new torpedoes can we build?" Commander Bayek asked during the quantum communication link with Earth. "Maybe 50, Dr. Choi replied. 60 at most. We simply don't have the infrastructure to build more than that. But the enemy has over 10,000 ships." "I know. That's why we're not going to attack all their ships. We're going to attack their flagships and command vessels. Cut off the head and the body will be confused." It was a desperate strategy, but it was the only option available. Earth couldn't match the Caltharian Empire in terms of ships or soldiers. They could only win through superior tactics and the willingness to attempt strategies that no reasonable military commander would consider. As Commander Bayek prepared to lead her task force into battle against overwhelming odds, she thought about the events that had brought humanity to this point. 6 months ago, Earth had been a peaceful world focused on scientific advancement and space exploration. Now they were engaged in a war that would determine the future of galactic civilization. "All ships prepare for quantum jump," she ordered. "We're going to show the galaxy that Earth's first victory wasn't just luck." The Quantum Storm and her escort ships disappeared from normal space, traveling through dimensions that most species couldn't even detect. They were heading toward a battle that would either save Earth or result in the complete destruction of humanity's first interstellar fleet. Either way, the galaxy was about to learn that humans were not going to quietly accept extinction. They were going to fight back with every weapon they could build and every strategy they could imagine, no matter how impossible those strategies might seem. The war between Earth and the Caltharian Empire was entering its second phase, and this time both sides knew exactly what they were fighting for. General Kang Min-ho stood in the command center built deep beneath the moon's surface, watching holographic displays that showed military operations across 17 different star systems. 6 months ago, he had been planning Earth's defense against a single invasion fleet. Now he was coordinating offensive operations that stretched across hundreds of light years. The lunar base had been expanded rapidly as Earth's military operations grew beyond anything anyone had originally planned. What started as a desperate attempt to save humanity had evolved into something much larger and more complicated. Earth wasn't just defending itself anymore. They were actively dismantling the Caltharian Empire's ability to threaten anyone. "Status report from the Vega sector," he requested. Colonel Lim Soo-kyung appeared on the main communication screen, her image transmitted through quantum channels from her ship near the Vega system. Behind her, through the bridge windows, stars moved slowly as her fleet maneuvered into position. "Target-rich environment, General," she reported with a slight smile. "We've located a major Caltharian shipyard complex. They're building new vessels with enhanced quantum shielding, but they're also constructing something we haven't seen before." "Explain." "Massive platforms, each one about the size of a small moon. Our intelligence suggests they're some kind of planet-killer weapons. If they complete construction, they could destroy Earth from anywhere in the galaxy. General Kang studied the tactical data streaming from Colonel Lim's position. The Caltherian shipyards were heavily defended, surrounded by automated defense stations and patrol fleets. A conventional attack would require hundreds of ships and result in massive casualties. Recommended approach? He asked. Temporal displacement torpedoes, Colonel Lim replied. We destroy their ships 3 seconds before they launch them. The weapon platforms will never have a chance to power up their defenses. This was the kind of impossible strategy that had become routine for Earth's military forces. When conventional tactics weren't sufficient, human commanders simply invented new forms of warfare that violated everything their enemies understood about combat. Meanwhile, in the Centauri system, Captain O.J. Mean was preparing for humanity's first boarding operation against a Caltherian fortress station. The massive structure was built into an asteroid and housed over 50,000 enemy soldiers. Traditional military doctrine suggested that capturing such a heavily defended position would require a force of at least 200,000 troops and months of siege warfare. Captain O had 200 Marines. Listen up, he addressed his soldiers, through the ship's communication system. The enemy expects us to follow standard galactic warfare protocols. They expect boarding parties to announce themselves, demand surrender, and engage in prolonged firefights while working their way through the station. Sergeant Ryu Hyo-sun, his most experienced non-commissioned officer, grinned behind her assault helmet. What are we actually going to do, sir? We're going to teleport directly into their command center using personal quantum displacement devices. While they're trying to figure out how we got there, we'll disable their gravity generators and flood their atmosphere with knockout gas. By the time they realize we're aboard their station, the entire facility will be under our control. The assault team materialized inside the Caltherian command center exactly as planned. The enemy commanders, who had been discussing defensive strategies against human attack, suddenly found themselves surrounded by armed Marines who had appeared literally out of thin air. Within minutes, the entire station was secured without a single casualty on either side. Back on Earth, Dr. Choi Min-ah was presenting her latest breakthrough to the Defense Council. The meeting was held in the same Seoul facility where Project Deep Strike had been conceived, but the room now contained holographic displays showing military operations across half the galaxy. Project Metamorphosis is complete, she announced to the assembled officers. We can now retrofit any human vessel with phase shift capabilities, allowing our ships to exist partially outside normal spacetime. Admiral Park Dae-ho, who had been promoted to overall command of Earth's military forces, studied the technical specifications. What does this mean in practical terms? Our ships can become intangible at will, Dr. Choi explained. Enemy weapons will pass right through them without causing damage. Our own weapons, however, can still affect enemy targets by shifting back to normal spacetime for the fraction of a second required to fire. How long to retrofit the entire fleet? 2 weeks for all active vessels. The Caltherians will find themselves fighting an enemy that doesn't follow conventional physics. Intelligence Director Hwang Eun-ji activated a galaxy-wide tactical display. Red areas showed Caltherian-controlled territory. Blue areas represented Earth's sphere of operations, and green areas indicated civilizations that had requested human assistance. The strategic situation is evolving rapidly, she reported. 17 civilizations have formally asked for Earth's military support against Caltherian occupation forces. The Empire's tributary states are beginning to rebel, knowing that human intervention is now possible. Admiral Park studied the shifting political map. Earth had never intended to become a galactic power. They had simply wanted to prevent their own extinction, but the galaxy was interpreting their actions differently. Sir, Director Huang continued, I should point out that many civilizations don't distinguish between Earth liberating them and Earth conquering them. In both cases, we're demonstrating military superiority over local forces. This was the problem Admiral Park had been dreading. Every successful military operation expanded Earth's reputation and increased demands for human intervention. Species that had suffered under Caltherian rule for centuries were looking to Earth as their salvation. But Earth's military was already stretched thin across dozens of star systems. What about our resource situation? He asked. General Kang pulled up production reports from Earth's industrial facilities. We're operating at maximum capacity. Every factory on the planet is producing either weapons or spacecraft. We've converted civilian manufacturing to military production, but we still can't keep up with operational demands. And personnel? We're training new recruits as fast as possible. But space warfare requires specialized skills that take months to develop. We have brilliant tactics and superior technology, but we don't have enough people to operate everything we're building. Admiral Park considered their options. Earth could continue expanding its military operations, liberating more systems and fighting larger battles. But eventually they would reach a point where their forces were too dispersed to be effective. They were winning every engagement, but the war was growing faster than their ability to fight it. There's another issue, Director Huang added quietly. Our intelligence networks are reporting that some civilizations are becoming concerned about Earth's rapid military expansion. The Andromedan Republic has privately asked their neighbors what safeguards exist to prevent Earth from becoming the next galactic empire. This was exactly what Admiral Park had feared. Earth's victories were inspiring hope among oppressed species, but they were also creating fear among established powers. The galaxy had lived with the Caltherian Empire for centuries. It was a known quantity, predictable and manageable. Earth was something new and unknown, and that made them potentially more dangerous than the empire they were replacing. "What's our diplomatic situation?" he asked Ambassador Song, who was participating in the meeting via quantum communication from Nexus Prime. "Complex," Song replied. "Everyone wants our help, but nobody wants us to become too powerful. The Galactic Council is discussing proposals to limit Earth's military expansion, while simultaneously asking us to intervene in conflicts throughout the galaxy. Can we ignore the Council's limitations? Technically, yes. But if we do, we risk turning the entire galaxy against us. Right now we have the moral advantage because we're fighting against an aggressive empire. If we start ignoring galactic law, we become the aggressive empire." Admiral Park walked to the large window that looked out over Seoul's skyline. The city was bustling with activity as millions of people worked around the clock to support Earth's military operations. But those same people had families, dreams, and lives that had nothing to do with galactic warfare. "We never wanted this war," he said finally. "We just wanted to protect our planet." "But now the war exists," General Kang replied. "And we're the only ones who can end it. By destroying the Caltherian Empire completely, or by making them incapable of threatening anyone ever again." Admiral Park turned back to his staff. These were good people who had been thrust into an impossible situation. They were trying to save not just Earth but every species that had suffered under Caltherian rule. But they were also transforming humanity into something it had never been before, a galactic military power. New operational priorities, he decided. We continue defensive operations to protect civilizations under attack. We continue offensive operations against Caltherian military targets. But we also begin preparing for peace. "Why peace, sir?" asked General Kang. "This war has to end sometime. When it does, the galaxy will need to know that Earth doesn't intend to replace the Caltherian Empire